Hello everyone and welcome back to the news. I'm going to be your tour guide for the news for the next maybe week or two while Michael's away. For today, I've got a few stories for you. Now imagine this, right? You're in a party in a game. One of the party members at some point, some turning moment in the story, goes complete mask off. They tear it off and they start screaming, "I was evil all along, ha ha ha!" And then they immediately backpedal and go, "Actually, maybe, wait, you didn't like me being evil? And then pause for about a week to actually bother doing anything close to apologizing and backpedal. That's kind of what Unity just did. It took them the guts of a week, but here's their announcement, right? We have heard you. We apologize for the confusion and angst the runtime fee policy we announced on Tuesday caused. We are listening. We are talking to our team members, community, customers, partners, and we will be making changes to the policy. And we'll be sharing those changes in a few days. Cool, sweet. So the good news is that at least a few Unity insiders have some form of hope out of this. You know, they're under NDA, but they can't share details, but a tiny glimmer of cautious hope. They were willing to talk freely, and they're willing to take the time to listen, which is basically the best thing you can do in a situation like this, right? If you're Unity and you've just been the villain of the week, villain of the month, potentially even villain of the year, if your CEO is not everyone's dragging him through the mud going, "Oh, this is literally the stupidest thing we've seen all year," being open and honest is actually something you can kind of go for. So they met with Unity contacts and leadership in a meeting that was specifically fought for by the Unity staff who wanted direct communication from the users to the leadership. And that's a good start. Whenever you have people inside a company batting for you, then you know you might actually get somewhere. So basically this meeting turned into a frank conversation about how absolutely insane the changes and how much trust has been ended from this person specifically. Morale is at an all-time low among employees of Unity and the situation is chaotic to say the least. Now, they are leaning a little bit more towards amendment to divide the anger rather than a full reprisal of the policy, which is an interesting thought. Even that delay from Tuesday to Sunday has been a long time, and you know the internet, time moves really fast now. We've published 2 videos so far with hundreds of thousands of views, so that's a lot of people who have seen exactly what Unity did, having seen exactly why they did what they did, and the immediate fallout of that. And even, right, Caves of Cud, it's already been ported off Unity. Literally, here, Brian ported Cud in half the time it took Unity to release a statement, saying in 2 more days, they will release a statement. I mean, when you're a company that big, you can't move fast, but you kind of have to because news travels so fast, sentiment travels so fast. Even you think about the speed that a Humble bundle was able to put together a Godot bundle. And now this may have been in the works and they've done stuff before, so it's not clearly an immediate reaction, but there's $25 or so you put into Humble and you get, well, by thousands of dollars by their account, but it's 20 full tutorials in Godot. The amount of people who are like, I need action now, my livelihood is threatened, I'm going to make this switch immediately, and I've done so. Unity were way too slow with this, it's brutal. Now obviously not everyone's going to be able to jump ship and port their game that easily. For others it's going to be literally impossible, and if they do move it'll be like, hey, we need to move to this entirely new platform and we're going to have to retrain all our devs in these new engines and we're going to have to kind of just suck up being on Unity for a while. So this is one small example. But at the same time, Unity-based mobile developers who are maybe by I guess proportion, maybe the worst affected by this, they're going for collective action, or they're arguing for it at least. As a course of immediate action, our collective of game development companies is forced to turn off all Iron Source and Unity ads monetization across our projects until these changes are reconsidered. I mean, if you're going to target a public company, if you want the public company to change, your power, it lies in your wallet. It lies in going, well, what if we turn off the money tap? Will you listen to us then? So you could imagine how Unity definitely saw that and they're going, oh, we need to be careful about this because this is an existential threat. But here's the big problem. The audience at large don't believe in Unity anymore. It's like I said at the top, they've torn off the mask. They've said, we were evil all along, that TV trope. There's absolutely no going back from, hey, by the way, we're actually going to make this really pig-headed decision. Obviously necessary, as we've covered. Not the actual decision itself, but some decision, some additional revenue was necessary. But the way they've done it has just proven to everyone, Unity aren't your friend anymore. It is the betrayal of a party member in basically every meaningful way, and there's literally no way of going back from that, even if they do a full walk back. But there is a little bit more to the story, so I'll continue. Some of these posts are exactly it, right? I've been told to expect a statement today. This is it. This is nothing. It says nothing but what they've been doing, which is changing the policy on the fly. And that's not confidence. You're not going to be confident in your business partner that your entire game, your entire business model, your entire livelihood is going to live or die on. There's literally no way to come back from. We unilaterally decided to change every contract everyone has ever had with us, charge them millions of dollars, and hope nobody is willing to fight us through litigation. Chris always has the most biting takes, and this is definitely one of the strongest. Unity, bullet in foot, loads another round into the chamber with shaking hands. Cries from all around tell them they don't have to do it. They can just stop. They level the gun again, this time aiming for their other foot. It must be done, they say, cocking the hammer. That's companies for you. We have heard you. We're listening. Every time we listen, that counts as an install. If we listen again, that's 2 installs. The dunking's fantastic, but I think the real takeaway here is what Rami said. I just had someone use, I don't want them to pull a Unity on me in a consultancy call about a contract. So that's how well things are going in this unprecedented clusterfuck, becoming a phrase that'll probably linger for a decade. I saw a image, and it was basically, it was most hated gaming CEO or worst CEO of the year or something. It was a whole load of years, and every single year there was a picture of Bobby Kotick. It's obviously just a shitpost. But then 2023, he's finally dethroned by John himself. And that's just how it feels to people. It is the great unification of developers and gamers and publishers against a common foe. And there's nothing stronger than the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Exactly in this situation where people can band together online and dunk. But I do have to be realistic. Unity aren't completely screwed, right? There's no way out of this that puts them to where they were before, but you have to be realistic about what this actually means for people, because they don't need to get rid of all of this anger. They just need to divide the audience. They just need people to go, well, that'll have to do. Or they have to make it stop being so funny that people shut up. Because if people stop talking about it, then you finally get that anger to peter out. Finally, you get people in the room and go, okay, yeah, we know we screwed up. Here's a heartfelt apology in silence or in private where no one's going to break it down. You're not going to throw it online and everyone will like dissect every letter for hypocrisies and things like that. They just need to basically tip the scales ever so slightly in their favor, and they will be able to see it through this. Because the important part here is the power dynamics and the opportunity cost, right? So you look at who has the agility to go, well, I'm not going to work with Unity anymore. And that's going to be basically not new developers, but developers starting new projects. That's going to be developers who have the time to go, okay, well, it doesn't matter if I and my staff or whatever have to go and relearn Godot or, you know, pick up Unreal Engine, stuff like that. Those are pretty reasonable, but they'll be mostly kind of newer indies will be doing that. And some people between projects. Like I've seen there's a few indies that I follow that have been largely doing that. There's a lot who are still stuck there, still stuck in Unity. Stuck in Unity not just with their existing projects. Obviously the jokes about Hollow Knight Silksong being, okay, well, wait another 5 years to be ported off Unity then. Obviously that tweet's been liked by Team Cherry's programmer and everyone going, oh no, it's happened, you've jinxed it. But even like Zeboid Games, the ones behind the Cthulhu RPG, stuff like that. But they say the Momodora dev who's like, okay, well, Momodora, the next game is too far along, so I'll have to wait until that project's finished. And you're looking at 2 or 3 years, 4 years time. And that's a lot of time for Unity to say, actually, you don't need to jump ship because we've been able to invest, we've been able to like make things right over a couple of years. All you need to do is not have people make rash decisions. And that's going to be an awful lot of their devs are literally going to be already kind of stuck there. And all they need to do is say, okay, well, opportunity cost of you having to retrain your devs, having to start new stuff, having all of the production problems of swapping pipelines going to do, that is really high by default. And the cost of staying on Unity has now gone higher than that for a lot of developers. While people are stuck in their platform, all they have to do is apologize and shift that balance of power. All they have to do is make sure that the opportunity cost, you know, all the retraining time, everything else, that is higher than their cost. If they do that, then they'll be out of this mess, but they still aren't wearing the mask anymore. Everyone still looks at Unity and goes, we know what you want. And obviously there's an element to that, which is, this is a company, it's a publicly traded company. Of course it's going to need revenue. Even reports from inside saying things like it wasn't sustainable the way they were going, and that's why they've been moving into other industries and things like that. It's almost the same as you look at Nvidia, and Nvidia's massive foray into AI and into crypto and Bitcoin mining and stuff like that. That was a massive play for substantially bigger profits than you can find in the gaming space. And that to games can be really helpful as long as the reinvestment comes back in, as long as that actually like proves its purpose. As long as we sitting here playing games or sitting here making games aren't being left at the wayside, aren't being abandoned for these higher profit industries, then that's okay. But in this case, it's clearly Unity going, well, what if we just do something really, really stupid, completely mismanage all of our PR, completely mismanage all of our statements, not talk to anyone properly for weeks. It was dumb, but there is a way out, but it's never going to be the same again. Now for some more positive news. A load of layoffs in the game industry. So far, EA Originals label has actually been pretty successful. Not massively, but fairly successful. Unraveled, Sea of Solitude, A Way Out, and then It Takes Two, right? It was this model of let's find interesting small developers who have really good like talents, really good takes, really good like ideas and pitches, and let's see how far we can go. Oh, you're really good. We'll feed you. You'll get big. We'll all be happy together. But this time it's gone a little bit wrong because Immortals of Aveum and Wild Hearts were very, very exciting in a bunch of ways. They were EA going, okay, what if we just third-party publish games? What if we do that? And that seems basically perfect because that's a throwback to like the older days of how those publishers used to work where, you know, Activision back in the day with all of their studios publishing all those different IP, EA doing the same much in the past. So you look at Immortals of Aveum and you go, there's a AAA scale single-player FPS led by a former Dead Space and Call of Duty creative director. On the other hand, Wild Hearts, which is Omega Force making basically another Monster Hunter attempt after they've made the Toukiden games, which were pretty reasonably successful enough, small versions of Monster Hunter. Here's a version for the West after the massive explosion of Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise. Surely this can't go wrong. But unfortunately, it's just been a little bit of a miss because Immortals of Aveum launched and everyone went, yeah, sure, that's okay. You look at OpenCritic and you see 72 average. That's a reasonable enough game. That's fine. You look at the critics recommend, 49%. It's not great, right? But it's not horrible, is it? Then you look at this year and go, by comparison, if you're charging full price for that game, or you're even asking people to play it instead of playing Baldur's Gate, Starfield, anything like that, you're running into an issue. And one former worker told Polygon that Immortals of Aveum is likely one of EA's worst selling originals, which ultimately resulted in nearly half the studio, Ascendant Studios, being laid off at once. Per a statement from their CEO, development will be continuing with performance improvements, which are definitely needed, and laid off staff are being given comprehensive severance packages and job placement support, but game shipped, didn't sell enough, don't have enough money to pay them. That's literally just what happens. Now, what actually went wrong here? And this is an interesting one because you look at Immortals of Aveum and I think any of us can kind of tell pretty quickly, right? It was a technical powerhouse. It was supposed to be a showcase for Unreal Engine 5. And in a few ways it kind of was because that game is, in a whole bunch of ways, very pretty. Very, very pretty. Especially when you look at the head count of the team. It is punching so far above its weight, but it was also very, very, very ambitious and in a couple of ways, tech-wise, just way beyond its time. The Verge analysed the game's recommended specs compared to the Steam hardware survey, and only 9% of PCs on the platform could properly run the game. And now, as to whether that means properly run the game as per specs, or, you know, what happens when you bounce off that the specs may not be entirely accurate, then you kind of run into issues, especially when you look at how we've just had performance issues all across the board recently. UE5 is relatively untested in terms of like fully released products, so there were likely issues all over the course there. The hardcore PC users are not going to go, oh yeah, well this was kind of rough around the edges. This was like, you'll see the clip of the FSR2 implementation and what it did to the gauntlet switching, which was completely utterly destroy any, like, this beautiful animation was just, hey, well, what if we frame gen? What if we generate half the pixels, but on a complex animation with loads of moving parts? That's just not going to work cleanly. That's going to result in big blur, which did. And then there's also the question of it being a marketing issue, right? I saw quite a few trailers as I was kind of following it anyway because I thought it was a fascinating concept. According to people, they didn't know about the game. There's a 10k upvotes on a post about it in r/game saying should have fired the marketing team, never heard of it. And I think some of that is, even though like it spent a load of time in Jeff Keighley's shows, I think some of that is literally just the time it launched. It launched in August. Like that was dead. Armored Core, Starfield, Baldur's Gate 3. Who was going to post about Immortals of Aveum? No one. That's like FromSoft, the generation RPG, the other generation RPG. There's clearly something wrong there with whoever made that decision. The marketing itself was also very bleh. It was, here's some fairly generic rap that doesn't sell the theme of the game. Here's some Marvel-esque quips from the game. Here's like the Immortals of Aveum. What is that? What is that supposed to mean? Does that inspire anything in you at all? Do you know what it is? Do you give a shit? Because I know I didn't, and that's why I thought it was interesting. Because there's elements of that where they can turn out okay. This one, even if we are to literally talk about the game itself, right? It seems fine. I've watched a couple of different parts of playthroughs. I haven't played it myself, and it looked okay, a little bit rushed. I know some of the elements of the more Metroidvania-ish, more the exploration elements towards the end were supposedly closer to the 8 out of 10 mark than the 7 out of 10 mark, but it seemed largely uninspired. And this was just, it was just sad where, like, I think the biggest issue is Ascending kind of ran out of money. I had to press the go button at some point, and it just went too early. And I think the instinct is to blame EA for this. Oh, EA didn't market it. Oh, EA didn't give them the time. Oh, EA's creative team came in and wrecked it. And none of that seems to have been the case whatsoever. Based on like interviews and stuff for the devs, it seems like this was literally just a product that was a little bit of a misfire in terms of niche genre, in terms of the marketing, the angle, the sell. What was the sell for the game? Here's a generic protagonist with a magic arm gun thing. What is this? This is a Call of Duty single player campaign, but it's all magic and stuff, which is not, obviously you look at how fantasy sells pretty well, but you look at the Call of Duty audience and go, well, they're likely not going to be too interested in this, which is then when it stopped being fantasy and kind of became a fantasy military kind of deal, which is all just a little bit of a shame, I think. I hope all of the developers and the team find the way out, because you never want to wish ill on them, but it just seems like this was just an unfortunate case of the product wasn't right. And you see that happen so many times. It just doesn't happen quite as often with an original published by EA, except for the fact it probably happened again with Wild Hearts. So a Discord mod for the Omega Force developed Monster Hunter like Wild Hearts set tongues wagging. They posted on Discord and Reddit saying the game will no longer get support and this is EA's fault, which we have to be a little bit skeptical about. So it launched pretty well, 79 on average, 74% critics recommendation. A lot of people went, okay, this is kind of Monster Hunter-y. Obviously, it's clearly Monster Hunter-y. It's got a couple of different bits mechanically that are interesting. It's like a step back some places, a step forward some places, but it's got that mystical Japanese aesthetic. It's got that vibe that people really, really dig. It came through, everyone went, okay, a little bit okay. And then the PC performance issues hit, which I think was maybe, considering you look at Monster Hunter World, you look at Monster Hunter Rise and the markets they found on PC, this might have been the nail in the coffin of an otherwise pretty okay game, because even now it's still mixed with 48% user reviews being positive. It's been out for 7-8 months, out for a long ass time, and there's still no sign of any performance improvements, even though there's been updates and stuff like that. And this is the frustrating part, because they posted on Reddit exactly what everyone wants to hear today. All post-launch contents will be free, including new kimono and more. We don't have any plans to feature microtransactions. And that's it, right? Full suite of live service support, no microtransactions, mixed and small PC launch. EA would have to pony up quite a bit, or maybe Omega Force and Koei Tecmo from their own side of the pot. They'll have to pony up an awful lot to continue development on this. And I think people right from the get-go were a little bit concerned. And this is kind of the nail in the coffin, because you look at that no microtransactions, and then you look at Monster Hunter here. And Monster Hunter doesn't have microtransactions in the way that we think of them today. It doesn't have a rotating cosmetic store. It doesn't have a load of FOMO stuff. It doesn't just basically take the piss. But you look at this image, you see what's going on here. That's 252 DLC items. Obviously it includes expansion stuff, but that's a lot of £1, £2, so $1 to $4 little bits. They're not in the store, they're just DLC, so it's a lot more palatable. But there is a post-launch monetization loop actually there with the game, which wasn't there with Wild Hearts, which definitely would have hurt its chances. Now, obviously, this is literally just a Discord post. There's been no solid confirmation for this, but it just goes to show that EA tried something really special. EA tried to push the boat out after a little bit of success, but it seems like for a variety of reasons, it just hasn't worked out as well as I think anyone would have hoped. Because I know we all love to dunk on EA, but you don't want to see things like this fail, especially after how grand Monster Hunter's success in the West was. Another version of that would have been absolutely beautiful for everyone involved, especially when it comes with a little bit of competition for Monster Hunter, when it comes like a different approach from a different dev. That stuff would all be fantastic, but it's just a little bit unfortunate. Now, the claim that the IP is going to be dropped by EA doesn't really track with how they've treated things previously, because you look at Knockout City, right? And that was an EA original. EA didn't really have much interest in continuing it. Yeah, we've charged for this, and the money's just not really there anymore, so whatever. But that studio were able to say, okay, well, can we have it back? Because we want to continue it. It's not as profitable as you would like, but it's more than fine for us. So they pulled it back, made it free to play, kept the IP, and went, okay, let's go. EA wanted this thing that's going to give them loads and loads of money, because that's what their job is. But for a dev who's just like, we're happy to make this, so we'll continue making this, then that's more than fine. So it's just kind of bad times for EA at the moment. They've seen a lot of losses this year, outside of Dead Space, of course, being fantastic. So I think it'll be interesting to see how their next wave of things work. Obviously, we've got something coming from Respawn with the pretty major hints at either something heavy Titanfall-y related to Apex, or maybe even a follow-up to Titanfall, because Titanfall 2, deep discount, and also multiplayer is fine. I played a game last night, and it literally took, I think, 10 seconds to find a match. It was really healthy, populated, a lot of returning players. That game's good. So that could be another like pretty major win for them, but it seems like over here they're just kind of eating a little bit L. Speaking of L's, this time Lies of P is out, time of recording, just about now. It's been in early access for a couple of days if you buy the deluxe edition, and it's no Bloodborne, but it's a Bloodborne-like, and I think that's what people are very, very happy with at the moment. South Korean Round 8 Studios, who previously made Bless Unleashed, kind of came out of nowhere going, here's Bloodborne, but it's Pinocchio, and instead of all of these horrific Lovecraftian blood creature nightmare tentacle things, umbilical cords, kind of creepy, what if it's all Pinocchio, right? And you think Pinocchio, what's Pinocchio? Boy wants to be a man. How do you make that? Well, you could go for like the wooden puppet route, but what's cool? Robots. What's cool about robots? What if are you a robot? Are you sentient? Or robots sentient? What if they're also kind of puppety? And then Bloodborne was very Victorian, so what if we set it in basically England? What if we have a gothic Pinocchio with a load of proper English like bobbies as the enemies? It's a really good aesthetic, and I'm very happy to see that it's kind of turned out pretty well. 82 critic average so far, and 85% critics recommend. It's not exactly a standout victory, but it is just a good ass game, it seems. The Jimquisition gives it an 8 out of 10, basically saying it's slick, it's beautifully presented, the absurd concept of Bloodborne and Pinocchio, it commits so earnestly, and everything silly about it just kind of works in the end, and that's beautiful. So maybe it's not, you know, if you want something new and special, it's maybe not there, but if you want something that feels close enough to Bloodborne, you're happy enough. Which I think, given the appetite for that game, I think a lot of people will be very, very happy with this. I've seen even streamers that I wouldn't have expected to be like super interested in the aesthetic or anything hop on it and go, this is beautiful. So I'm very happy to see. Eurogamer, 3 out of 5, and it seems a little bit mostly like it seems too Bloodborne-y for them, where Kaelin goes, yeah, it's just, you're playing Lies of P and you're thinking, man, I really want to be playing Bloodborne 2 in a way, which is unfortunate, but again, it's still had a good time of it, which I think is, if you're, like I said, if you're looking for a Bloodborne-like, there's a new one out, and it seems to be good enough to be worth your time. Now, VG247 does give it a 2 out of 5 and saying, there's some enjoyment, it's competent, but it lacks the polish and the stir of its contemporaries, which just kind of means it's not super clean, not super clear, not perfectly directed. Talks about a hodgepodge of themes and aesthetics you've seen before. That's what I think was, because I played the demo quite a while ago, and I think that was the part that really got me the most, was sitting there going, okay, this is a game, it has an aesthetic, it goes so in on Lies of P, it's Pinocchio, basically the point is, robots can't lie. Pinocchio's a robot, kind of, which means you can go around using robot stuff, but you can also lie. The whole, Asimov's law of robotics kind of deal, but he can lie. And obviously then, I don't know how this pans out in like game storytelling, if you've got something like the Bloodborne insight that impacts on lies, but you could imagine all the stuff. Pinocchio, does his nose grow? Is that a game mechanic in some capacity? Likely. And then something similar from PC Gamer, right? Didn't start the year expecting to be compelled between Pinocchio's origins, the puppet frenzy, the cursed miracle fuel, and wishing on stars, but here we are. Crickets lead you to strange places. Of course, Jiminy Cricket. So that's another part of the aesthetic that I think is beautiful. It's very starry. There's a lot of like astromancer kind of astrology, astronomy kind of stuff baked into it, which I think is really compelling in terms of how deep and dark it is, but also that mystical energy, that what the hell is going on, why is everything so metaphorical, that kind of FromSoft love that you feel isn't there in its full form, but it's there in a whole bunch of ways. It apes the aesthetic in a way that I think a lot of South Korean games, as a result of how their like development practices grown, there's maybe a little bit of less of a focused creative vision and a little bit more hodgepodgey compared to the likes of Hidetaka Miyazaki leading and going, no that's wrong, do it again. There's an awful lot of like that in it, which I think is beautiful. And the last bit of news, and this is beautiful for PC gamers, it runs well. It runs well on PC. Bet you wouldn't hear me say that about any other video game this year, basically. It runs great on the Steam Deck, 800p, medium settings, FSR2 balance, consistent 60 FPS. There's a PC gaming post here saying, Lies of P is one of the best optimized games this year. And for something coming out today on Game Pass and on Steam and on console, that's definitely something you want to hear. A game like Bloodborne that runs at a solid 60. I don't think we could ask for anything more. Anyway, that's been the news for today. Thank you for joining me, Unity. And just check if your foot is in the way of the gun before you pull the trigger. I think that's all they really need to do. That's really it. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.